Now back on Chainlink Pearl Market, this is following on from the video I posted yesterday. This one I have actually edited a bit together because I wanted to keep it on point and on topic, and that topic is about pacing in games. We're talking about attack and defense, which is the best way to go about it. Should you be constantly rushing and pushing? Should you be defending? More steady approach? Well, the answer is neither. It's a balance. You've got to look at multiple factors, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, a lot of people, when you're just pushing bases constantly, they'll call that ring around the rosy, and to be honest, it's an incredibly oversimplification. Their point of view is that you're just pushing bases mindlessly like a headless chicken. Cap one, move, cap one, move. That's the way that they perceive it. Actually, there's a lot more going on there if you're an intelligent player. And what you really need to be doing is looking at a few things. Looking at the enemy team, looking at your team, knowing your squad capability, are you playing solo, and then understanding what it is that you need to do to have the biggest impact into the game. Now, if you're just going to be pushing bases one after the other, this is actually not a bad thing. You're being aggressive, you're putting the pressure onto the enemy, and you know, the classic phrase comes to mind of the best defense is a good offense. And that's absolutely true, and that's true in a lot of the, you know, the spread out kind of conquest style maps, be it domination, chain link, or conquest. If you're attacking and constantly putting pressure onto the enemy and you're handling the enemy well, that's going to, you know, give an advantage to your team. It's going to put the enemy on the back foot, and it's going to make it more difficult for them to take control of the situation. But how do you know when is the right time to attack and when is the right time to defend? Well, again, it's not as simplistic as just you playing it however you want to play it. You need to look at a few things in order to make sure that you have the most chance of success for you and your team. One thing you need to do, of course, is look at your team. How are they doing? Do they suck? Are they good? Are they very aggressive? Are they very defensive? You know, and then obviously you need to fit yourself into that situation. If they have, you know, good fundamentals, but they're just maybe not being aggressive enough, well, hey, you guys need to be the front line. You need to be breaking in there. If they're very, very aggressive and rushing, well, maybe you guys can be the support, and you hold everything together. You guys are the ones that do more defense work, you recap bases more, and you hold all that together, and you let them push forward. So it's all about fitting in and understanding. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, hey, I want to do whatever the hell I want to do in the game. Well, that's fine, go for it. You'll just probably lose the round because you won't be doing what's necessary to make sure that that game overall comes together, because you really need to look at what the team are doing, understand where they're moving, how they're aggressive, you know, pushing around, and compensate for that. Similarly, you obviously need to have a look at what the enemy team are doing, because this is something you always need to do. Are they being very aggressive? Are they being very defensive? If they are putting a lot of pressure towards you, well then you need to be ready to be flanking, to be prepared to hop back on bases and defend them, and, you know, control that. If they're being very defensive and campy, well, hey, easy mode. You can just push forward, cap bases, flank them, you know, and totally control that situation, because they're not going to be pushing up towards you, and they're probably going to lose control of the map very, very quickly. The other thing that you need to be aware of and understand, of course, is your squad. Your squad, the guys that you're playing with, it helps a lot if you're able to communicate with them rather than if you're just playing solo. That's going to have a big impact on the game. If you're playing with a squad like I am right here, we can spread people around the map. You can stay together in 2s and 3s, you can send one guy off solo, you can stay together as a group, you can hit a base all together in one go if you really want to try and take it down, and you can eliminate high priority targets, be it somebody who's just staying in one spot and racking kills, put them back into the game. Now, the other thing is that sometimes, like I said on that last video, you know, you've got to dig people out, and when that happens, if you have an enemy player who's racking kills, that is actually a very bad thing for your team for obvious reasons. Now, the reason it's bad is not just because, and by the way, I had very little chance of going up there, but I wanted to roll the dice and see whether, you know, I was just hoping I might get a little bit lucky and they wouldn't be there, you know. But the thing is, if you have one guy on the enemy team who's constantly wrecking your team, it's really important that you take the time to dig that person out if they're in a set position. If they're moving around the map and just doing really well, then whatever, you know. But if they're in a situated place, it's really, really important that you dig them out. And the thing is, obviously it's bad that they're killing a lot of your players. That's bad for one reason. But the main bad thing is that they could become a major distraction. Now, this happens when people are in vehicles or whether they're infantry on the ground. And the reason it's so important to get those players taken down or out of their little hole, wherever it is that they're hiding, is because if you allow them to become a high target for the whole team, suddenly you'll find that those other players on your team that you're working with will disappear, and that's when suddenly the whole game can fall apart, because if you don't have those other players around, if they're not sort of pushing objectives and keeping the rest of the enemy team busy, suddenly you're going to find that you're swamped and overwhelmed, and then you might not be able to recover from that. So those individual players who are racking kills in one spot might seem like an irritation, nothing more, but actually they can be a devastating effect on the whole of your game, and that's why it's really important to prioritize. Prioritization in Battlefield is one of the key facets of the game, and that's as well as capping bases. In order to play this game really well, you need to be able to prioritize bases, understand which ones you need to hit, and then put your team into good effect on those. Now I cut out some time here moving back from G to F, but look, see, we capped G back to F, and all of a sudden G's gone down, so moving back to F. So it's not about necessarily ring around the rosy, even though us as a squad in this game were pushing very fast and hard. We wanted to get back on this base, defend it, secure it, and keep it under control. And so it's about sort of looking at where you want to be on the map, understanding which are the important bases for you and digging them out. It's also about putting pressure onto the enemy. Putting a lot of pressure on the enemy will keep them busy and keep them away from the other places in the map and the rest of your team as well. And you can see that by moving back to G and then the rest of our team was somewhere else, we've actually managed to take full control right here. Now that was a hilarious situation. That was such bad luck. That's a typical case where I was just like, okay, feels like nothing's going on, start to move away, go for the reload, and just as I start to reload, that guy comes around the corner and I just couldn't get back on him. But then we had a massive bit of a close quarter fest right here with the guys. Anyway, as I say, so the key really, as I say, is looking at what's happening in the game. It's the simplest thing in the world, and that's the thing when people say, like, can you give more advanced tutorials, or can you tell us what's the keys, all these things. That is nothing like that. All you need to be really good is just observation and understanding what is your priority, prioritizing those bases and moving to them, as well as momentum. Like I've said so many millions of times, momentum is it's just a core fundamental. You have to keep moving and putting the pressure and it's not about ring around the rosy, because again, like I say, that's such a stupid term for such a fantastically elemental system. Okay, you have to keep moving because you have to keep the pressure up. If you sit back and just try to defend a base, you think, okay, I'm going to control like D and E, I'm going to stay here, control these, well, you might not be doing anything there. It's no importance. You've got to keep moving and be fluid and be ready to sort of deal with different situations as they arise. If you just stay in one place, and defense of a base doesn't mean just staying there, and again, I think that's something that people misunderstand. It's like, if you were just going base to base to base, right, and you just ignored where the enemy team were, that is a bad thing, okay? But if you're moving fast and capping bases and pulling back onto those that need it and listening to your squad and moving around, all of those things are really good. So it's all just about understanding, okay? It's all about looking at where people are, where the enemy are, where your team are, how well they're handling different situations, looking at kind of maybe what class setups the enemy have, how are they all snipers, are they pushing very aggressively with assault, do they have a more balanced setup, if you're in a game mode where you had a lot of vehicles, are there loads of engineers? If so, maybe don't push the vehicles so much, maybe go to counter that class. So it's all again rock paper scissors. So all of these things come together to make the kind of patchwork of the game. But as I say, the real true focus of this was attack and defense. What's the best way, to play it? And again, you'll hear a lot of people talking or being very aggressive, and they go only for the kills and they push straight down the lanes, and they're covering those lanes and pushing them and getting down on them. And it's like, that's great, that's really great. It's good to do that. But at the same time, if you don't take the moments to kind of flank and push, or maybe be a spawn point for your squad and do all of these kind of things, there's the support aspects which are just as important. So attack and defense is all very well, but if you don't put the other elements all together and make the whole game come to one, it's just not going to work properly. You have to have the whole package in order to make it work. And again, this is right here, we're talking about the little micro tactics, and it's like, again, a lot of people I would see would kind of re-peek that corner, but I'd already taken some hits, and he was in a much stronger position than I was right there. So rather than peek and try and get the kill, pull back, gain your health, and wait for support from the teammates. And again, I had a teammate right here next to me, he comes to me, and then you have the advantage. And again, I'm one for making that mistake. I often chase guys like that, and I get caught up in the moment, and I want to take him out, so I push too fast. You've got to slow it down, let them come to you, because more often than not, that's what will happen. Sometimes when I'm in a one-on-one situation like that, I'll sort of start to engage, and then I don't like the feel of the situation, I'll pull back, I'll even perhaps circumference around them, I'll go all the way around, come back round, and they don't expect it, you catch them out. It doesn't work all of the time, sometimes you're going to get caught out yourself, but a lot of the time it does work. So again, that kind of ebb and flow, you know, moving forward, moving back, knowing where to move. Another thing that you can do, which is really, really important when you're on these kind of flowing games where you're attacking and defending, is being able to split your squad. So for example, like I've said before, you double cap, all right? So if you're coming up to a base, and maybe you are in the sort of losing situation, you want to take control of the game, a very good thing to do is move with your whole squad to one area and then split and simultaneously cap 2 bases, especially if you can get a flank going on. That's a devastating impact on the enemy team. If you manage to get like a fast moving vehicle, transport, quad, a little buggy, whatever, okay, grab that fast flank, get past the enemy, and especially this happens if you have an aggressive enemy team. If you have an aggressive enemy team and they're pushing up on your line and pushing up and pinning you, drop that smoke, get through, break them, flank out, get up there, get your squad together, double cap bases, you know, get on them, split, move, cap. Okay, that will suddenly put them in a terrified, they're like, shit, we've lost 2 bases, we've got to get back and do it. Then hopefully if your team have got anything about them at all, they'll use that situation to move up, push forward, and retake control of the game. And then even if you lose those 2 bases, it doesn't matter, because hopefully then your team are in a better position, and then you can reassess and understand what it is that you need to do next. So I hope this has been a useful one today, guys. As I say, I'm just thinking about the kind of overall principles of moving and attacking and what's going on there. I've got a lot more stuff to talk about with this, and I've got more games to show you guys. Somebody requested about a conquest that we did on Locker, and I'm going to be showing you that one, because that was a good example of how, you know, your team can perhaps not be performing the best and you can be trying really hard, but it just doesn't come together because maybe they've just not got their game on, you know, they're sort of not really trying. And that comes back to what I was saying in the last game, where you have those kind of public players and then maybe they just don't want to move forward unless they feel they're in a safe place. That's a really difficult one to kind of counter, because if they're not willing to sort of participate, it makes it very hard for you. And it could just be that you're back in those games which are really unwinnable, because if your team are not willing to sort of participate and actively, you know, exploit the situations that you may create, there's nothing that you can do, and that's so frustrating. As I say, I think I do have a round where I can kind of showcase that and talk about that a little bit, so I'll probably try and show that for, you know, one of the next ones very, very soon. Again, I want to say, guys, thanks for watching. If you've got through to here at the end, and this wasn't a longer video, but I've been making those long videos, and it's a bit of a thing for me this week about people really participating and watching my videos all the way through, because I really, really appreciate it. So if you're one of those guys, drop it in the comments below, because I super, super appreciate it. I want to say thanks to everybody as well. Just this week, I'm feeling really like, you know, I love my subscribers and I love the way people get involved. I love the fact that you guys always give me really strong comments below, and I really, really appreciate that. I've got a lot more stuff coming up very soon. As I said as well, I want to get back into a regular schedule, more thought for the day, more round breakdowns. But again, ask me any questions, guys. If you have a specific situation in Battlefield that you find is always very difficult, you don't know what to do, drop that down below. I'll try and put together something where I answer it, because I know many people have questions about what to do in certain situations. I'll try and be here to answer that for you. So thanks very much, guys. If you enjoyed it, drop it a rating. I'll see you next time for some more Battlefield 4.